Hello everyone, welcome to Elisa Maria Designs. I am Elisa Maria, and it is time for book 2, chapter 6 of Jaws with my husband Johnny, who's reading. And I got us a surprise last week. I have on my Amity, my Amity shirt, and he's got one. His is different, but first let me just say, happy birthday, Jaws. What
Anniversary.
Anniversary.
50 years.
Well, birthday, anniversary, same thing. 50 years. What a great time to be reading Jaws.
I know. I had no idea.
We did not plan this.
We started planning this. I had no idea it was going to be 50th anniversary.
Let me see your shirt.
Of the film.
Quince shark fishing.
Established 1975, but it's backwards.
Okay, well it says Quince.
I know, but forget it. All right, let's
All
go,
right.
people.
Here, you put this where you want. I'm over here taking my notes for the. You can be up or down. You can move that. It goes up higher. It can tilt down if you want to look at the book.
I'm fine. Okay, people. We are now up to chapter 6
Book 2.
of Peter Benchley's Jaws. Let's commence. On our way home Friday noon, after a morning of volunteer work at the Southampton Hospital, Ellen Brody stopped at the post office to buy a roll of stamps and get the mail. There was no home mail delivery in Amity. In theory, only special delivery mail was brought to the door. Any door within a mile radius of the post office. In fact, even special delivery mail, except that clearly labeled as sent by the federal government, was kept at the post office until someone called for it. The post office was a small, square building on Teal Street, just off Main. It had 500 mailboxes, 340 of which were rented to Amity's permanent residents. The other 160 were allotted to summer people, according to the whims of the postmistress, Minnie Eldridge. Those people she liked were permitted to rent boxes for the summer. Those she didn't like had to wait in line at the counter. Sounds about right.
The politics.
Since she refused to rent a box to any summer person on a year-round basis, summer people never knew from one year to the next whether or not they would have a mailbox when they arrived in June. It was generally assumed that Minnie Eldridge was in her early 70s and that she had somehow convinced the authorities in Washington that she was well under compulsory retirement age. She was small and frail looking, but deceptively strong, able to hustle packages and cartons nearly as quickly as the two young men who worked in the post office with her. She never spoke about her past or her private life. The only common knowledge about her was that she had been born on Nantucket Island and had left sometime soon after World War I. She had been in Amity for as long as anyone living could remember, and she considered herself not only a native, but also the resident expert on the history of the town. She needed no prodding at all to embark on a discourse about Amity's eponym, a 17th century woman named Amity Hopewell, who had been convicted of witchcraft, and she took pleasure in reciting the list of major events in the town's past. The landing of some British troops during the Revolution in an ill-fated attempt to outflank a colonial force. The Britons lost their way and wandered aimlessly back and forth across Long Island. The fire in 1823 that destroyed every building except the town's only church. The wreck of a rum running ship in 1921. The ship was eventually refloated, but by then, all the cargo offloaded to make the ship lighter had vanished. The hurricane of 1938 and the widely reported, though never fully ascertained, landing of 3 German spies on the Scotch beach in 1942. Ellen and Minnie made each other nervous. Ellen sensed that Minnie didn't like her, and she was right. Minnie felt uneasy with Ellen because she couldn't catalog her. Ellen was neither summer folk nor winter folk. She hadn't earned her year-round mailbox. She had married it. Minnie was alone in the post office, sorting mail, when Ellen arrived. "Morning, Minnie." Minnie looked up at the clock over the counter and said, "Afternoon." "Could I have a roll of 8s, please?" Ellen put a $5 bill and 3 ones on the counter. Minnie pushed a few more letters into boxes, set down her bundle, and walked to the counter. She gave Ellen a roll of stamps, dropped the bills into a drawer. "What's Martin think he's going to do about that shark?" she said. "I don't know. I guess they'll try to catch it." "Canst thou draw out Leviathan with a hook?" "I beg your pardon?" "Book of Job," said Minnie. "No mortal man's going to catch that fish." "Why do you say that?" "We're not meant to catch it. That's why. We're being readied." "For what?" "We'll know when the time comes." "I see." Ellen put the stamps in her purse. "Well, maybe you're right. Thanks, Minnie." She turned and walked toward the door. "There'll be no mistaking it," Minnie said to Ellen's back. Ellen walked to Main Street and turned right, past a boutique and an antique shop. She stopped at Amity Hardware and went inside. There was no immediate response to the tinkle of the bell that the door struck as she opened. She waited for a few seconds and then said, "Albert?" She walked to the back of the store, to an open door that led to the basement. She heard 2 men talking below. "I'll be right up," called the voice of Albert Morris. "There's a whole box of them," Morris said to the other man. "Look through and see if you find what you want." Morris came to the bottom of the stairs, started up, slowly and deliberately, one step at a time, holding on to the banister. Morris was in his early 60s, and he had had a heart attack 2 years earlier. "Cleats," he said when he reached the top of the stairs. "What?" said Ellen. "Cleats. Fellow wants cleats for a boat. Size he's looking for. He must be the captain of a battleship. Anyway, what can I do for you?" "The rubber nozzle in my kitchen sink, it's all cracked. You know, the kind with the switch for spraying. I wanted to get a new one." "No problem. They're up this way." Morris led Ellen to a cabinet in the middle of the store. "This what you had in mind?" He held up a rubber nozzle. "Perfect. 80 cents. Cash or charge?" "I'll pay you for it. I don't want you to have to write up a slip for just 80 cents. "Written a lot smaller than that," said Morris. "I could tell you stories that set your ears to ringing." He walked across the narrow store to the cash register, and he rang up the seal on the register. Morris said, "Lots of people upset about that shark thing." "I know. You can't blame them, she said. They think the beaches ought to be opened up again. Well, you ask me, I think they're full of, pardon the expression, bull. I think Martin's doing right. I'm glad to know that, Albert. Maybe this new fella can help him out. Who's that? The fish expert up from Massachusetts? Oh yes, I heard he was in town. Oh, he's right here. I looked around and saw no one. What do you mean? Down the cellar. He's the one who wants the cleats. Just then, Ellen heard footsteps on the stairs. She turned and saw Hooper coming through the door, and she suddenly felt a surge of girlish nervousness, as if she were seeing a beau she hadn't seen in years. The man was a stranger, yet there was something familiar about him. I found them, said Hooper, holding up 2 large stainless steel cleats. He walked over to the counter, smiled politely at Ellen, said to Morris, "These'll do fine." He put the cleats on the counter, handed Morris a $20 bill. Ellen looked at Hooper, trying to define her reminiscence. She had hoped Albert Morris would introduce them, but he seemed to have no intention of doing so. "Excuse me," she said to Hooper, "but I have to ask you something." Hooper looked at her again, smiled again. Pleasant, friendly smile that softened the sharpness of his features and made his light blue eyes shine. "Sure," he said, "ask away." "You aren't by any chance related to David Hooper, are you?" "Oh, he's my older brother. Do you know David?" "Yes," said Ellen, "or rather, I used to. I went out with him a long time ago. I'm Ellen Brody. I used to be Ellen Shepherd. Back then, I mean." "Oh, sure, I remember you." "You don't." "I do, no kidding. I'll prove it to you. Let me see. You wore your hair shorter then, sort of a page boy. You always wore a charm bracelet. I remember that because it had a big charm that looked like the Eiffel Tower. And you always used to sing that song. What was it called? Oh, Shaboom, or something like that, right?" Ellen laughed. "My heavens, you have quite a memory. I've forgotten that song. It's screwy to things that impress kids. You went out with David for what, like 2 years?" "2 summers. They were fun. I hadn't thought about them much in the past few years." "Do you remember me?" "Vaguely. I'm not sure. I remember David had a younger brother. He must have been about 9 or 10 then." "Yeah, about that. David's 10 years older than I am. Another thing I remember, everybody called me Matt. I thought it sounded grown up. But you called me Matthew. You said it sounded more dignified. I was probably in love with you." "Oh," Ellen reddened, and Albert Morris laughed. "Well, at one time or another," said Hooper, "I fell in love with all the girls David went out with." "Oh." Morris handed Hooper his change, and Hooper said to Ellen, "I'm going down to the dock. Can I drop you anywhere?" "Thank you, I have a car." She thanked Morris, and with Hooper behind her, walked out of the store. "So now you're a scientist," she said when they walked out of the store. "Kind of by accident. I started out as an English major, but then I took a course in marine biology to satisfy my science requirement, and bingo, I was hooked." "On what? The ocean?" "No, I mean, yes and no. I was always crazy about the ocean. When I was 12 or 13, my idea of a big time was to take a sleeping bag down to the beach and spend the night lying in the sand, listening to the waves, wondering where they had come from and what fantastic things they had passed on the way. What I got hooked on in college was fish, or to be really specific, sharks. Ellen laughed. What an awful thing to fall in love with. It's like having a passion for rats. Well, that's what most people think, said Hooper, but they're wrong. Sharks have everything a scientist dreams of. They're beautiful, God. How beautiful they are. They're like an impossibly perfect piece of machinery. They're as graceful as any bird. They're as mysterious as any animal on earth. No one knows for sure how long they live or what impulses, except for hunger, they respond to. There are more than 250 species of shark, and every one is different from every other one. Scientists spend their lives trying to find answers about sharks, and as soon as they come up with a nice pat generalization, something shoots it down. People have been trying to find an effective shark repellent for over 2,000 years. They've never found one that really works. He stopped, looked at Ellen, and smiled. I'm sorry, I don't mean to lecture. As you can see, I'm an addict. And as you can see, said Ellen, I don't know what I'm talking about. I mentioned you went to Yale? Of course, where else? For 4 generations, the only male in our family who didn't go to Yale was an uncle of mine who got thrown out of Andover and ended up at Miami of Ohio. After Yale, I went to graduate school at the University of Florida, and after that, I spent a couple of years chasing sharks around the world. Well, that must have been interesting. For me, it was paradise. It was like giving an alcoholic the keys to a distillery. I tagged sharks in the Red Sea and dove with them off Australia. The more I learned about them, the more I knew I didn't know. You dove with them? Hooper nodded. In a cage, mostly. Sometimes not. I know what you must think. A lot of people think I've got a death wish, my mother in particular. But if you know what you're doing, you can reduce the danger to almost nil. You must be the world's greatest living shark expert. Hardly, Hooper said with a laugh. But I'm trying. The one trip I missed out on, the one I would have given anything to go on, was Peter Gimbel's trip. It was made into a movie. I dream about that trip. They were in the water with 2 great whites. The same kind of shark that's here now. I'm just as glad you didn't go on that trip, said Ellen. You probably would have tried to see what the view was like from inside one of those sharks. But tell me about David. How is he? He's okay, all things considered. He's a broker in San Francisco. What do you mean, all things considered? Well, he's on his second wife. His first was, oh, maybe you know this, Patty Fremont? Sure, I used to play tennis with her. She sort of inherited David from me. That's a nice way of putting it. That lasted 3 years until she latched on to someone with a family business and a house in Antibes. So David went out and found himself a girl whose father is the majority stockholder in an oil company. She's nice enough, but she's got the IQ of an artichoke. If David had any sense, he would have known when he had it good, and he would have held on to you. Ellen blushed and said softly, well, you're nice to say it. I'm serious. That's what I'd have done if I'd been him. What did you do? What lucky girl finally got you? None so far. I guess there are girls around who just don't know how lucky they could be. Hooper laughed. Tell me about yourself. No, don't. Let me guess. 3 children, right? Right? I didn't realize it showed that much. No, I don't mean that. It doesn't show at all. Not at all. Your husband is, let's see, a lawyer. You have an apartment in town and a house on the beach in Amity. Couldn't be happier. And that's exactly what I'd wish for you. Ellen shook her head, smiling. Not quite. I don't mean the happiness part. The rest. My husband's the police chief of Amity. Hooper let the surprise show in his eyes for only an instant. And he smacked himself on the forehead and said, what a dummy I am. Of course. Brody. I never made the connection. That's great. I met your husband last night. Seems like quite a guy. Ellen thought she detected a flicker of irony in Hooper's voice, but then she told herself, don't be stupid. You're making things up. How long will you be here? She said. I don't know. It depends on what happens with this fish. As soon as he leaves, I'll leave. Do you live in Woods Hole? No, but not far away, in Hyannisport. I have a little house on the water. I have a thing about being near the water. If I get more than 10 miles inland, I begin to feel claustrophobic. Do you live all alone? All alone. It's just me and about $100 million worth of stereo equipment and 1 million books. Hey, do you still dance? Dance? Yeah, I just remembered. One of the things David used to say was that you were the best dancer he ever went out with. You won a contest, didn't you? The past, like a bird long locked in a cage and suddenly released, was flying at her, swirling around her head, showering her with longing. A samba contest, she said. At the beach club. I'd forgotten. No, I don't dance anymore. Martin doesn't dance, and even if he did, I don't think anyone plays that kind of music anymore. That's too bad. David said you were terrific. That was a wonderful night, Ellen said, letting her mind float back, picking out the tiny memories. It was a Lester Lannon band. The beach club was covered with crepe paper and balloons. David wore his favorite jacket, red silk. I have it now, said Hooper. I inherited that from him. They played all those wonderful songs. Mountain Greenery was one. He could two-step as well. I could barely keep up with him. The only thing he couldn't do was waltz. He said waltzes made him dizzy. Everybody was so tan. I don't think there was any rain all summer long. I remember I chose a yellow dress for the night because it went with my tan. There were 2 contests, a Charleston that Susie Kendall and Chip Fogarty won, and the samba contest. They played Brazil in the finals, and we danced as if our lives depended on it, bending sideways and backward like crazy people. I thought it was going to collapse when it was over. You know what we won for first prize? A canned chicken. I kept it in my room until it got so old it began to swell, and Daddy made me throw it away. Ellen smiled. Those were fun times. I try not to think about them too much. Why? The past always seems better when you look back on it than it did at the time. And the present never looks as good as it will in the future. It's depressing if you spend too much time reliving old joys. You think you'll never have anything as good again. It's easy for me to keep my mind off the past. Really? Why? Just wasn't that great, that's all. David was the firstborn. I was pretty much an afterthought. I think my purpose in life was to keep the parents' marriage together, and I failed. That's pretty crummy when you fail at the first thing you're supposed to accomplish. David was 21 when the parents divorced. I wasn't even 11. And a divorce wasn't exactly amiable. The few years before weren't too amiable either. It's the old story, nothing special, but it wasn't a lot of fun. I probably make too much of it. Anyway, I look forward to a lot of things. I don't look back at a lot. I suppose that's healthier. I don't know. Maybe if I had a terrific past, I'd spend all my time living in it. But enough of that. I should get down to the dock. You sure I can't drop you anywhere? Positive, thank you. My car's just across the street. Okay, well, Hooper held out his hand. It's been really great to see you again, and I hope I'll see you before I go. I'd like that, said Ellen, shaking his hand. I don't suppose I get you out on a tennis court late some afternoon? Ellen laughed. Oh my, I haven't had a tennis racket in my hand since I can't remember when, but thanks for asking. Okay, well, see ya. Hooper turned and trotted a few yards down the block to his car, a green Ford Pinto. Ellen stood and watched as Hooper started the car, maneuvered out of the parking space, and pulled out into the street. As he drove past her, she raised her hand to her shoulder and waved, tentatively, shyly. Hooper stuck his left hand out of the car window and waved. And he turned the corner and was gone. Terrible, painful sadness clutched at Ellen. More than ever before, she felt that her life, the best part of it at least, the part that was fresh and fun, was behind her. Recognizing the sensation made her feel guilty, for she read it as proof that she was an unsatisfactory mother, an unsatisfied wife. She hated her life, and she hated herself for hating it. She thought of a line from a song Billy played on the stereo. I trade all my tomorrows for a single yesterday. Would she make a deal like that? She wondered. But what good was there in wondering? Yesterdays were gone, spinning ever farther away down a shaft that had no bottom. None of the richness, none of the delight could ever be retrieved. A vision of Hooper's smiling face flashed across her mind. Forget it, she told herself. That's stupid. Worse, it's self-defeating. She walked across the street and climbed into her car. As she pulled out into the traffic, she saw Larry Vaughn standing on the corner. God, she thought, he looks as sad as I feel. Chapter.
And we're back. In our Amity. It's higher.
They're backwards.
So what?
Well, how are they supposed to read them?
They'll stick because they can read backwards, that's why.
They read backwards.
So let me just tell you. Look at all the notes I was taking while you were writing. Plus I was drawing the people of the town. This is Minnie. In the post, no mail for you.
70 years old.
She's the history buff of Amity.
She's the
The politics of the small community.
She's the postmaster Nazi.
You've known a few.
Petty tyrants, I call them.
Petty tyrants, we call them. Gatekeepers. So,
not all gatekeepers are petty tyrants, though.
You're right. So let me write down. I wrote down the politics of a small community. We're starting to meet a few of the townspeople. We met Albert Morris.
hardware store.
The hardware store. We met Minnie.
Minnie's
Who's
the
running the
postmistress.
post office. Just
With an
this
iron
is-
fist, I might add.
Yeah, I was like, oh, this is going to be like a really boring chapter. This is just about the life of Ellen, being a housewife, doing the mundane things, running the errands, going to the post office, stopping off for this and that. But then
Not true.
I should know, because when I start to get this tension in my stomach that Peter Benchley is so good at doing, you get this. He's building. It started out really like a low tide, right?
Yes, as a chapter, a standalone chapter, it does seem relatively uneventful compared to some of the other chapters. I mean, again, I think that. What chapter are we on right now? What did we just read?
We're on 6, book 2.
We just read 6. I'm saying, right now, chapter 1 is the standard that all the other chapters are going to be measured against, because chapter 1 was short, terrifying, suspenseful, titillating, psychological. I mean, the reader just gets pulled in chapter 1, and that was great writing. And it's interesting that Benchley realizes that every chapter can't be that way. You have to basically do what all good writers do, which is you have to have exposition, and so you have to discuss and tell the reader about the characters, what their motives are. All of that is expository in nature. And that's what builds your story. And that first chapter was just the shark just viciously attacks and kills Christine Watkins, and it really just puts the reader on right on the edge of his seat. That. So go ahead.
So she goes over to the hardware store. That's the next thing that happens. I don't even know what the hell she was buying, but
she had to buy a rubber nozzle for her sink.
Right. Okay. So we now meet
Matt
Hooper, and I don't know. Do we have an age on Matt Hooper? He's 10 years younger than David.
He's 10 years younger than David, but he's probably in his early 20s to mid 20s. Whereas
she's how old? She's not
Ellen Brody is probably maybe a little slightly younger than 40.
Yeah.
Martin Brody is definitely over 40.
Right.
I think he's around 42 or so.
Yeah, he's north of 40.
But Benchley made a point of informing the reader that Ellen Brody still turns heads at
oh yeah, she's a sex pot.
at like 40 plus years of age with 3 kids. She basically, to use Chief Brody's words, she looks better in a bikini than most of the summer residents half her age.
Yeah. So I was trying to get a handle on how Matt was going to be described, and I took some notes here that I found Matt to be age. He's young, he's intelligent, he's confident. He went to Yale. All the men in the family went to Yale, and I think he also, you're getting an idea of the type of world that Ellen belonged to,
or could have chose.
Yeah.
So
she became from this very privileged, academic,
affluent. Her parents had money, and she.
Well, you got an idea of the people that she ran with just by Matt, now telling her about David and where he is in his life. He's a broker.
Benchley does a very good job of making the dichotomy of summer people and winter people, which is how he describes them. All your residents are winter people, and they live there all year long, and that's a certain class of people. Whereas the summer people are definitely a higher class of people. And again, without going into pedantics here, I don't want to make moral commentaries, but what we mean is these people have money. They live in Manhattan. They have they live in penthouses, they live in high rises, they live on the Upper West Side, because those are the kind of people that can just spend their summers in Amity or Martha's Vineyard.
I mean, got an idea even too, like with the young kids that came to Amity and would lay on the beach, and they had like perfect hair, perfect teeth, you know.
And that could have been Ellen.
That's money.
That could have been Ellen, but she gave it up to marry Martin Brody.
So let's just stick with Matt right now, because I wanted to get a feel for, you know, this young boy. I'm calling him a boy. He's a young man. We were saying he's in his early 20s. Let's say mid 20s.
Yeah. Again, I don't think.
I think David has 10 years on Matt, and I think Ellen probably has 10 years on Matt too.
No. Oh, yeah, but so hold on. Right, but don't get it confused. Okay, if you want to do it that way, I would say it like this. David is probably somewhere between 24 and 27 years old, and Ellen is therefore somewhere between 34 and 37 years old. But Martin Brody being around 40, 42 years old, because he's got a few years on his wife.
So one thing that I remembered him saying, I wrote it down, great white shark. Like he said, great white shark, like the one who is here.
Yeah.
So, right, you know, we have the shark label.
Well, yeah, I mean.
Because didn't he
No.
any of the teeth marks and whatever?
Hold on. As the story wore on, from the beginning, no one was certain what kind of shark was killing people in Amity. It was only after Ben Gardner's killing, the fisherman, that when Brody and Hendricks went out on the boat, Hendricks leaned over and pulled that shark tooth out of the side of the boat. And when he gave that shark tooth to Hooper, the shark expert, then he said, this is a great white. It's the only shark or fish of that size or would have teeth this big. So yeah.
So I'm maybe I'm psychologizing Matt a little bit. So I wrote down too that Matt remembered a lot for a little boy.
Oh, he did, but I don't think that's unusual. I mean, like, I was only 3 or 4 years younger than my older brother, but man, you know, again, I was in love with all the girls he hung with, and I did my best to try and hang out and tag along, and my brother would always tell me, get lost, and sometimes the guys would say, oh, let him stay. So, you know, I think that every young boy, and especially with a 10-year age difference there, sort of looks up to his older brother. And so, not only do you look up to your older brother, but like, the girls that your older brother goes out with, it's like these creatures of like, oh my God, you're 9, 10 years old. You're just amazed at these women. You know, they're not girls, they're women, and you're just you know, in a sense of awe and amazement.
So I also think that we get kind of an idea that Matt is growing up in a household. You know, David's got 10. How many years does your brother have on you?
Oh, my oldest brother's got 15 years already.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he's kind of out of the house already, but Matt is there with parents that are eventually going to divorce. So you get some kind of idea.
Not only that, his parents divorced when he was 11 or something. So, like, you know, he's going to be in the house at least till he's 16, 17, 18.
So he was there for all the tension in the house.
Well, not only that, if they divorced, he probably had to live with one or the other or both.
But we don't know that yet. I don't know
Whereas
that yet.
David was probably already out of the house.
21.
Yeah, well, again, out of the house probably.
Yeah.
Maybe even married. Probably was in college.
Yeah,
right.
and so he's divorced, and the divorce made me sad when he said, I was the afterthought. I was probably born to keep the marriage together. And I know people do this. I hear this, that, you know, we're going to have a baby to save a marriage.
And I failed that.
Don't ever put that kind of responsibility on a baby to save your marriage. It's not their responsibility to save your marriage.
If I may, and I feel I got to push back on this, it's not the parents who put that on the child. The child himself takes that on.
That's the first time I heard a child say, I failed at keeping the marriage together. It's not his responsibility, and you do have grown adults in a marriage that do have babies to think that they're going to save their marriage.
So
that's not the work that you do to save your marriage.
To me, this is a perfect illustration of the difference, morally speaking, between there's guilt, but there's unearned guilt and there's earned guilt.
Right.
So unfortunately, a lot of people, myself included, feel guilty for things that they're not responsible for. But that guilt is unearned guilt. Now, when you earn guilt and you do something malevolent or malicious or cruel, then yeah, you should suffer the feelings of guilt, because morally speaking, you deserve it of that guilt. But I would say that Italians and Jews especially, with the Jewish mother, and trust me, the Italian mothers ain't far behind.
And we have a lot of Italian friends, but we have a lot of Jewish friends.
There's
too.
a lot of
we see the similarities.
There's a lot of unearned guilt going on.
Yeah.
Catholic guilt.
Yeah.
Imagine when you're Italian and Catholic, the guilt that goes on.
And I have friends that are, he's Jewish and she's Italian. Woo!
Pack your bags. We're going on a guilt trip.
So we also got an idea too, just through this little conversation. This is when I started to feel the tension building. With you're getting an idea of who Ellen was when she was with David, and she played tennis with his first wife, and she was a dancer, and she said things twice. Try not to think about the past. I'm like, why can't this woman think about her past? That's when I first started to...
Hold on. I got to push back again. So, when she says, I try not to think about my past, that is a confession. That is a confession of her psychology.
Yeah.
Better yet, her psychoepistemology.
Yeah.
So, what she's saying is, I don't want to spend too much time thinking about all the good times I had in my past, because then it makes me depressed, because I feel like, hey, I'm the mother of 3 young boys, I married Martin Brody, and all of my good times are behind me.
Well, that's what I'm saying. He's speaking as a man, I'm speaking as a woman. If I felt as though I couldn't look back on my past because it made me feel regret, because that's what I'm getting from her. Like, and I also wrote, because she said something again, and I wrote, it's making me wonder, why did she leave her privileged academic background for a very small life in Amity with the chief of police?
Because she thought Martin was a good man.
So
she loved Martin, and she, on some level, made a decision to renounce the good life that she could have had she stayed in her own circle.
And then, like, I always ask you this question. I'm trying to stay in the order of my notes as the way that the story unfolded. I almost threw up when she had this thought, would I trade all my tomorrows for a single yesterday? That's probably the one line in the whole chapter, because I always say there's something that Benchley writes that sticks with me. That is such a depressing, I will trade all my tomorrows for a single yesterday.
For the record,
that is somebody that is hopeless, that has no outlook on the future, and creating the world that she wants to live in. For the record,
the reference comes from a song.
I know the song.
Written by Chris Christopherson. Yeah. Made famous by Janis Joplin. Me and Bobby McGee. Trade all my tomorrows for one single yesterday. For those of you that didn't know, that's where that line came from. But
thank you, Motown Records.
I have a natural talent for useless information.
Yeah.
So, again, I will, on this point, I agree with Elisa that to say I betrayed all my tomorrows for one single yesterday, that is the psychology of hopelessness. That's the psychology of a renunciation of value and values, because what you're saying is, I'll never create any value or values that are equivalent to the value or values I had had in the past, and that's just that's a person who has no self-esteem.
Yes, it does, and it also makes me wonder. I'm trying to stay within my notes instead of just going back and forth. I did go over all of this. So there's a regret. I mean, because did she have to give up her whole life? She could still play tennis. Maybe she's not playing tennis at the country club, but she could still play tennis.
Elisa,
She could still dance even though her husband doesn't dance.
I think you're really not being. You're not being very thoughtful.
First of all,
you're not being very thoughtful about this story.
I'm not being thoughtful.
Hold on. Let me.
These things obviously.
Let me
brought her
finish.
joy.
Let me finish.
Stop screaming. These things actually brought her joy. She saved what? A can of chicken?
Elisa.
Did she save a can of chicken?
She did. That was the prize for winning the Samba contest.
Why? Because every time she looked at it, it made her feel good.
Yeah. Okay. Can I finish? The woman got married to a working man. Okay. She didn't have a lot of money. The man didn't earn.
We're not talking about Brody's life.
I'm talking about Ellen's life. She had 3 children.
So what?
So again, she had a job. She had a job where she volunteered at the hospital. She's raising 3 kids and her husband. When do you think she was going to do all this other stuff?
Volunteered at the hospital. What do you think she gets paid as a candy striper? Nothing.
You're missing the point, Elisa.
No, I'm not missing the point. I think I'm making a very good point. Listen, I came from a very lonely marriage. I didn't give up the things that I loved because my husband didn't want to dance. I still went out dancing. He was invited everywhere with me. He had a choice. He chose no. Didn't stop me from doing the things that brought me joy.
So you can't conceive of a human being who would get married below her station in life and have 3 kids and sort of not like by conscious decision.
A person that, number one, does not see that she, going by your story, she married this man because he was a good man. She gave him 3 children. They had 3 children together. It wasn't like they stopped at 1. They went for 2. And like some of my friends say, 3 pushes you right over the edge. So she has desire and love for her husband.
No, you're missing that point.
But wait, you're making me forget my point.
Go ahead.
But now, she sees a whiff of her past again, which she probably does every summer, and she always has this longing and regret. She can't see how blessed she is to have a good man and 3 beautiful children. It stops her from living her life. She's a depressed woman. And now I'm getting another opinion of her that I don't like. I think she's another kind of freaking shark. Today we would call her a cougar. But the story, let me put that right down here because this is why I told him, let's not have the commentary because I got to write down my thoughts while they're short. I'm like, is she restless? Is she depressed? Does she have regret? But there's some kind of internal shift going on with this woman every time she sees a part of her past, right? So, where was I going with this? I was going with the closing visual, the visual that I had. Matt gets in his car, and she's like very shyly waves, little smile. Everything is so freaking polite, right? Because that's our upbringing, to be polite, and probably had etiquette, proper etiquette. She's very charming, but her mind is racing. And there's that internal shift, that pain in my stomach that Benchley gives me. This is a little bit of a foreshadowing. Because what question did she ask? Oh, get it out of your head. Get it out of your head. Yeah. How did you take that from a man's point of view?
Get it out of her head was her fantasizing about having an affair with fucking Matt Hooper.
See, I didn't want to go there because it wasn't written out for me.
No, of course that's what she was thinking. And then she immediately said to herself, get that out of your head. It's crazy. It's crazy.
This is an empty woman. I want to know why she left her big life that she has so much regret every time she gets a whiff of her past. What is she hiding from? That she latched herself onto this small-time guy that and that's what it was. That's what it was. Okay. The initial talking point that I had was, why does Millie, this sharp postal woman over here, Why can't she get a kind of picture on Miss Ellen? Because she feels it too. She feels it too. That's why. You didn't earn anything. You married into it. You didn't earn a post box. You married a post box. But even Millie has that sense about her.
Okay, so I just want to point out to you, we're talking about a character in a novel, and again, I get all your. Hold on. Can I get an idea out, please? So I get your, moral outrage at Ellen Brody, but we're talking about a character in a novel. So, I just think that you should absolutely psychologize and place value judgments on these characters and try to figure out what motivates them
I know what it is.
to do what they do.
It just hit me.
All right, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, please. No, please.
Finish.
Enlighten us, oh wise one. Go ahead. Go ahead.
She's vapid and vacuous.
Oh my God.
That's why they're making such a point of what she looks like on the outside. This is how she made it through life. It got her foot in the door, but she's vapid and vacuous. And what did she say about the girl that her old boyfriend married? She had the intellect of a what?
No, she didn't say that. Hooper said that.
Oh, okay.
An artichoke.
I'm sure.
She said,
I'm sure so did Ellen.
She said
she had the intellect. She couldn't keep up.
She said that woman inherited David from her, but she said that's a nice way of saying it. In other words,
so she was the hot tomato.
No, in other words, David was messing around with this woman even before they broke up. That's what I got out of that one.
Oh, I didn't get that. I got that they broke up. And I also think that she's playing it off in her head that David would have had a very beautiful life with her and she'd stuck around. Like no woman has ever lived up to her.
Well, I mean, listen again. David was, again, if we're going to do the dichotomy thing, then let's say David was from the right side of the tracks, the good side of the tracks, the wealthy side of the tracks. So again, if she stayed with David and married David, she would have had a completely different life. She'd probably still be living on the Upper West Side, vacationing her summers in Amity or Martha's Vineyard or wherever. But again, I think that as a character in a book, Benchley does a good job of writing this character because, the whole, all of literature is based around conflict, even if it's internal conflict.
Oh, that's it. Move over with this chair.
What?
So you already have this little bit of another undertone with this Peter Benchley. It's always like a little undertone until it like swells. You get the ripple. We're only getting a ripple right now. We're getting ready for a tsunami. There's already a little tension between Brody and Hoop.
Oh, yeah, that was written.
No, we're having a commentary.
I'm putting this in here. I'll be right there. That was written in to the whole exchange. To the whole exchange.
Now we're going to have a triangle. All right. I said my piece.
I don't think so.
I did. I got her down to rights. She's vapid, vacuous, empty. She thought, I'll get married, I'll have kids, and look at my life where I'm living, but they're, rubbing pennies together. And first of all, your husband isn't making enough money, okay? It's tight. And what are you doing in this hospital that you're volunteering? Go make some money.
Can I tell our viewers the story about the quote unquote the source of the vapid and vacuous remarks?
Yeah, tell them again how you were wrong.
So when Elisa and I first started going out and seeing each other, we were
we knew each other.
We knew each other a long time.
Right.
She'd been in my company socially a lot, with and without her husband, and as we started to get to know one another, and you know, I think for both of us, it was a surprise. Like, she never expected me to be who I am. Because,
an intellect and a thinker.
Because
well, anytime I saw John, he was the MC of wherever we were. You're the center of attention. You're the party. The party don't start until John Pompo walks in.
And then there was plenty of after parties too.
And then the after parties that I came to in this house. I can't believe it.
So anyway, I guess her impression of me was that
you're a party boy.
Right, I'm a playboy, party boy.
Playboy,
but
party boy.
She didn't really understand
the front door was like a turnstile.
The depth of my personality. But so we had this conversation of like, you know, well,
wait. Our first really heavy duty conversation. Here he is. Get him. Amazon. Our first heavy duty conversation.
All right, guys.
I gotta wait. Let me wait for him. This is from one of the companies that asked me to do a review. They had me hostage in the house all day. We were going to go to Atlantic City. We were going to go to docks. I said, oh, how great, we could read Jaws on the beach. And he's like, that's a great idea. But I was like, oh, wait a minute. I got this package coming. I can't go nowhere. So we'll go to docks tomorrow. I'm going to take you with us. Okay. So the first really intellectual conversation that you and I had on the phone, he knew something was wrong. He was trying to pull it out of me, like what was going on with me, why I was never at the shows or whatever. You and I had this heavy-duty conversation because he was driving down my street, and it's a joke amongst all our friends that when you see a mail truck, do you automatically think it's Johnny? And we all do. We're all like, is that Johnny driving the mail truck? And I was outside. I was on the phone with the casino that we were supposed to be opening a restaurant in, and I was losing my mind because I knew that this was a bad deal and it had turned bad, and I was screaming my head off. And he drove by, and I stopped, and he beeped the horn, and he went, hey, and I went, hi. After that, after I was done with my phone call, I contacted him and I said, you made my day. Like, it was such it was so conscious of me that for that 1 second that he drove by and waved, that I got back to myself, then I got back to screaming, and I felt like that when I had that same memory when Hoop is getting in the car and he waves to her.
Well, again, when we did speak after that infamous moment of waving to her from the meal truck, and you know, it was in my head when she said to me, "You made my day,"
right?
And I was like, "Whoa, you know, not like again, I know I'm charming and charismatic, but I made your day by like saying hello to you and waving to you." But I think it was deeper than all of that in the sense.
And we had this really good conversation on the phone. I was like, who am I talking to? You know, really, because we never really talked intellectually. And I said to him, John, you and I get along so well, we should get married. It was a joke. I was married.
When I say get lost.
He went, no! And he hung up the phone.
No, I didn't hang up the phone. That's not what happened.
You got off the phone really quick.
No, I didn't.
Yes, you did. Anyway, so go ahead, tell them the fact and the fact.
So, you know, in the course of these, us discovering one another and realizing that our impressions of the other were completely wrong, and you know, I seen how Elisa was, you know, just very artistic, creative, funny, and so she says to me, well, what did you think of me before you got to know me? I said, I thought you were vapid and vacuous. And because she does have this quality, she does have this quality of being sort of like
airy.
Airy is fine, but can I speak for myself instead of you saying the words for me? She has this quality of, I would call it, there's a sense of aloofness that she carries herself with, and so I think that a lot of people always thought that she was a bitch and a snob because of this aloofness sort of vibe that she gives off, antisocial because
Yeah, and
she didn't have anything to
anytime
say.
you saw me, I was walking around with a yoga mat. I was teaching constantly. I have a couple.
Come on, let's wrap this up. How are we going to do this?
So it makes me wonder. MMW is what I put in my notes. It makes me wonder. Was she attracted to Matt because of who he is or what he reminds her of? Things are changing in Ellen. Her emotions are stirred, and then I had the tension with Matt, Brody, and now Ellen, and that hurt. My mind's racing, but so is
Matt
Ellen's.
Hooper.
So is Ellen's, and I think we determined, is she attracted to Matt because of who he is, or for what he represents?
Oh, that's interesting. I like that one. So I think that yes, on some level, Matt Hooper absolutely represents the life that she abandoned and the life that she could have had. But again, you got 3 kids and you're married to Martin Brody. Like, you know, now is not the time to say, oh, maybe I'll just pivot and go the other route. You're already down that path. You
I
have 3
can't
kids.
wait to see how this story unfolds. He knows the story because he read it already, but I'm in the dark like you guys. I don't know if I'm on point with what I think about Ellen, and maybe that's why he's in such an uprising, or maybe I'm wrong. But I think that she's not going to solve anything if she goes down this road.
No, but again,
This is a big part of the story. That's
of
really
course she's
missing
not
from
going
the
to
movie.
solve
Let's
anything
remake
if
this
she goes
movie.
down this show. But this is an issue I have with you, which is
Dude, so-
we're talking about a character in a novel.
Where do you think this character came from?
Yeah, but I'm saying,
There's a million women like this.
and that's my point. There are a million women
Yeah.
like this. So why are you getting so upset?
Because this is a story, and this is a part of the story that I never knew before. Why am I getting so upset? I'm tired of her going back. She doesn't want to think about the past. Well, you're curious. Why don't you want to think of the past? Well, I mean, you made this choice. Do you not like your choice that you made? You have a nice home. You have a handsome husband. He's got some status in the little town that you're from. You're living, even though you had this other life. You're living there year round. You know, I mean. There's ups and downs wherever you live.
Here's the other
There's plenty
thing.
of women living in Manhattan that are as lonely as Ellen.
Here's the other
with
thing.
all the money in the world.
I haven't heard hardly anything in terms of the dynamics of Ellen Brody towards her 3 sons.
No, the
So-
kids are like missing. They're like invisible.
Yeah.
Where are they? Are they coming? Are you gonna let me know? Let us know. Did the kids show up?
Not really. I mean, you're going to hear more references to them, but I'm not hearing what I'm looking for, which is a sort of understanding of what kind of a mother
She is.
Ellen Brody is. You know, again, it's a very broad question. You know, again, think about your own mother or my mother. Like, what kind of a mother are you? I mean, that's complicated stuff. You know, it's not. And I say this to my wife all the time. All the time she asks me, well, why? I said, I'll tell you why. Because people are complicated. Yeah, that's why.
Of course they are.
People are filled with contradictions. People are at war with themselves. You know, no one is you know, most people are not what they appear to be. You know, there's a lot going on beneath the surface. So.
Yes. Chapter. We hope that you enjoyed our commentary. It gets a little heated. This is the Pompo household all the time.
This was quite the
yin yang,
the fireworks
male,
for this chapter. And again, I never expected it because it was such a short chapter. But
yeah, but your intellectual wife is here to light the fire. And let us know what you think. I'm so excited for movie night. I'm trying to get a few days under my belt where I'm not in front of Elisa Marie, trying to get behind Elisa Marie Designs and not so much in front of it, so I can get my Discord nailed down, get my members to take a look around, and get ready for movie night. How many chapters are in this book?
Looks like 14.
14? Did you say 14?
14.
We're halfway there. Next week is chapter 7.
Okay.
Maybe you could read faster.
Goodbye, everybody.